The knife gleamed under the flickering kitchen light, its edge catching the shadow of my trembling hand. I stood frozen, staring at the stranger who'd broken into my Seattle apartment at 2 a.m., his silhouette framed against the open fridge. He wasn't here for my TV or my laptop. He was eating my leftover lasagna. "Yo, this is good," he said, mouth full, as if he hadn't just kicked in my back door. His voice was casual, almost warm, like we were old friends sharing a midnight snack. I should have screamed, called the cops, or at least swung the knife, but something about his easy grin and the way he leaned against my counter, unbothered, stopped me cold. "I'm Jada, a 28-year-old trans woman trying to make it as a graphic designer in a city that's as rainy as it is unforgiving. My life's been a series of restarts. New name, new city, new dreams, but nothing prepared me for this. A thief in my kitchen, treating my home like a diner. His name, I'd later learn, was Mateo, a 30-year-old drifter with a knack for breaking locks and, apparently, my defenses. "Who the hell are you?" I finally managed, gripping the knife tighter. My voice shook, but I hoped it sounded tougher than I felt. The air smelled of garlic and tomato sauce, absurdly comforting despite the chaos. Mateo wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, his dark eyes glinting with mischief. "Just a guy who's hungry," he said, setting the lasagna container down. He was lean, with a faded denim jacket and a beard that looked like it had seen better days. "You gonna stab me over some pasta?" I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "You broke into my house. Door was practically open," he lied, gesturing to the splintered frame. "Look, I'll leave. Just let me finish this bite." Something about his audacity disarmed me. Maybe it was the exhaustion of a 12-hour workday, or maybe it was the loneliness that had settled into my bones since moving here. I lowered the knife just an inch. "You've got 10 seconds to explain before I call the cops." Mateo raised his hands, still holding a fork. "Fair. I'm Mateo. I don't usually do this break-ins, but I saw your light on, smelled something amazing, and I got weak." He paused, his gaze softening. "You look like someone who gets what it's like to be a little lost." His words hit harder than they should have. I'd spent years building walls around my heart. After family rejection, after heartbreak, after fighting to be seen as me. Yet here was the stranger, seeing right through me with a single glance. I didn't call the cops. Instead, I did something stupider. I sat down. Over the next hour, Mateo told me his story between bites of lasagna. He was born in Tucson, raised by a single mom who worked 3 jobs. He drifted up the West Coast, picking up odd jobs, construction, bartending, even a stint as a street artist. "I'm not a bad guy," he said, leaning back in my creaky kitchen chair, "just bad at staying put." I told him bits of my story, too, though I kept it vague. Growing up in Atlanta, coming out at 16, the fallout with my family. How I'd moved to Seattle to chase a design job and a fresh start, only to find the city lonelier than I'd expected. Mateo listened, really listened, his eyes never leaving mine. It was unnerving, how easy it felt to talk to him. "You're brave," he said quietly, when I mentioned my transition. "Takes guts to live your truth like that." I snorted, deflecting. "Brave's a stretch. I'm just stubborn." "Nah," he said, grinning. "Stubborn's good. But you're more than that." The conversation stretched into the early hours, the broken door forgotten. By the time he left, promising to fix the frame, I realized I hadn't just shared my lasagna. I'd shared a piece of myself. And Mateo, the thief, had taken something intangible, my guard. The next day, I woke up to a text from an unknown number. "Thanks for not stabbing me. Doors fixed. Coffee sometime? M." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. I should have blocked him. He was a criminal, a risk, but my apartment felt emptier without his voice filling it. I met him at a cafe in Capitol Hill, a cozy spot with mismatched chairs and the smell of roasted beans. Mateo was already there, sketching on a napkin, his jacket slung over the back of his chair. He looked up, and his smile hit me like sunlight through clouds. "You came," he said, almost surprised. "Don't flatter yourself." I shot back, but I was smiling too. We talked for hours about art, about dreams, about the scars we carried. Mateo was a paradox. Reckless but thoughtful, charming but guarded. He told me about his mom's death 2 years ago, how it sent him spiraling, drifting from city to city. I told him about the design job I'd landed, only to lose it when the startup tanked. We were two people who'd been knocked down, still figuring out how to stand. When he reached for my hand across the table, I didn't pull away. His touch was warm, grounding. "Your trouble," I said, half joking. "Maybe," he admitted, "but the good kind." That week, Mateo became a fixture in my life. He'd show up with coffee, or we'd walk along the Puget Sound, watching ferries cut through the mist. He had a way of making the world feel lighter, like my struggles weren't so heavy. But there was a shadow to him, too. Late-night calls he wouldn't explain, bruises on his knuckles he brushed off. I wanted to trust him, but doubt gnawed at me. One night, as we sat on my couch, a movie playing unnoticed, I asked, "What's the catch, Mateo?" "Nobody's this perfect." He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm far from perfect, Jada. I've got my demons. But you make me want to be better." His words were a spark, igniting something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I leaned in, and when our lips met, it was like the world clicked into place. But even as I melted into his warmth, a voice in my head whispered, "What's he hiding?" The spark between us grew into a flame, but flames can burn. Mateo and I were inseparable, spending evenings cooking in my tiny kitchen or wandering Seattle's rainy streets, sharing umbrellas and secrets. Yet, the shadow I'd sensed in him lingered. He'd disappear for hours, claiming errands. And his phone was always on silent. I wanted to believe in us, but trust is hard when you've been broken before. One rainy afternoon, we were at Pike Place Market, dodging tourists and fishmongers. Mateo bought me a bouquet of wildflowers, their colors vivid against the gray sky. "For you," he said, tucking a daisy behind my ear. His fingers lingered, and I felt my walls crumble a little more. "You're too good at this," I teased, but my heart raced. I was falling fast, and it scared me. Love had hurt me before. Rejection from family, from partners who couldn't handle my truth. Mateo seemed different, but doubt was a stubborn guest. That night, he cooked me dinner, tacos with a recipe from his mom. As we ate, I noticed a fresh cut on his hand. "What happened?" I asked, pointing. He shrugged, too quick. "Cut myself fixing a friend's bike. I didn't buy it." "Mateo, level with me. What's going on with you?" He sighed, pushing his plate away. "Jada, I'm not perfect. I've done things I'm not proud of. But I'm trying to be someone you can count on." His vagueness frustrated me, but his eyes were earnest. I wanted to press, but instead, I kissed him, letting the moment drown my questions. It was easier to feel than to think. A week later, I got a call from my friend Aisha, a bartender at a dive bar downtown. "Jada, you know that guy you're seeing? Mateo?" Her voice was tense. "I saw him last night, arguing with some sketchy dude in the alley. Looked like trouble." My stomach dropped. "What kind of trouble?" "Dunno. But it wasn't friendly. Just be careful, okay?" I confronted Mateo that evening at my place. He was sprawled on my couch, sketching a portrait of me that made my heart ache with its detail. "Aisha saw you last night," I said, crossing my arms. "Who were you with?" His pencil stopped. Just a guy I know. It's nothing. Nothing? You're dodging me, Mateo. If we're doing this, I need the truth. He stood, pacing. It's complicated, Jada. I owe some people money from before. I'm handling it. Before what? Breaking into houses. My voice was sharper than I meant. He flinched. I told you, I'm not that guy anymore. I'm trying to get out. But it's not that simple. I wanted to believe him, but fear clawed at me. I can't do this if you're not honest. He stepped closer, his voice soft. I'm in love with you, Jada. That's the most honest thing I've got. The words hit like a tidal wave. Love. I hadn't dared hope for it, not like this. But love doesn't erase secrets. Prove it, I said. No more lies. He nodded, pulling me into his arms. I will. I swear. The next day, Mateo took me to a community art show in Fremont, where he'd submitted one of his sketches. It was a portrait of his mom, her face alive with strength and sorrow. She'd have liked you, he said, his voice thick. She always said to find someone who sees you. He nodded, but his eyes were distant. That night, he didn't stay over. He said he had to handle something. I lay awake, wondering if I was a fool to trust him. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. Meet me at the cafe tonight. I'll tell you everything. My heart raced. Hope and dread tangled together. I spent the day distracted, my design work suffering. By evening, I was a bundle of nerves, heading to the cafe where we'd had our first real date. Mateo was there, sitting by the window, his face tense. He stood when he saw me, pulling me into a hug that felt desperate. I'm sorry, he whispered. I never wanted you to get caught up in this. Caught up in what? I asked, pulling back. He took a deep breath. I used to run with a crew, small-time stuff, mostly theft. I got out when I met you, but they're not letting go easy. They want me to do one last job. My heart sank. What kind of job? He looked away. A break-in. Some rich guy's place in Queen Anne. I said no, but they're threatening to come after me, or anyone I care about. The words hung heavy. You mean me? He nodded, his jaw tight. I won't let that happen, Jada. I'm meeting them tonight to end it. Panic surged. Mateo, you can't. They sound dangerous. I have to, he said. For us. I grabbed his hand, my voice shaking. Then I'm coming with you. No way, Mateo said, his voice firm. This isn't your fight, Jada. It's our fight. I shot back, my heart pounding. You don't get to decide what I can handle. The cafe buzzed around us, oblivious to the storm brewing in our corner. I wasn't backing down, not when I'd finally found someone worth fighting for. Mateo's eyes searched mine, torn between fear and something softer. You're stubborn as hell, he said, a faint smile breaking through. Fine, but you stay back and you listen to me. Promise. I nodded, though my stomach twisted. What was I getting myself into? That night, we drove to an industrial park on the edge of Seattle, the city lights fading into a maze of warehouses. Mateo's hands gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. I sat beside him, trying to stay calm, but my mind raced with worst-case scenarios. The man I loved was tangled in a past I barely understood, and I was diving in headfirst. We parked near a rusted warehouse, its windows dark. Mateo handed me a burner phone. If anything goes wrong, call Aisha. She knows people who can help. Mateo, we should just go to the cops, I said, my voice low. He shook his head. Cops won't help someone like me. Trust me, I've tried. Before I could argue, a shadow moved near the warehouse. A man stepped into the dim streetlight, tall, wiry, with a scar across his cheek. Mateo, he called, his voice sharp. You're late. Mateo squeezed my hand before stepping out. Stay here, he whispered. I watched him approach the man, my heart in my throat. Two others emerged from the shadows, their faces hard. This was the crew he'd run with, people who thrived on fear. I couldn't hear their words, but Mateo's body language screamed tension. The scarred man gestured wildly, pointing at Mateo, then back at the warehouse. I clutched the phone, my thumb hovering over Aisha's number. Then, the scarred man grabbed Mateo's jacket, pulling him close. My breath caught. Without thinking, I stepped out of the car. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice echoing. All eyes turned to me. Mateo's face paled. "Who's this?" The scarred man snarled, letting go of Mateo. "She's nobody," Mateo said quickly, but his eyes pleaded with me to run. I didn't. "I'm with him," I said, stepping closer. "Whatever you're planning, leave him out of it." The scarred man laughed, cold and cruel. "You got a loyal one, Mateo. Too bad loyalty don't pay debts. Leave her out of this, Vic," Mateo growled, stepping between us. Vic's eyes narrowed. "You owe me, man. One job and you're free. Or we can make this messy." I felt the weight of their stares, the threat hanging in the air. But I saw something else in Mateo's eyes, resolve. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for us. "I'll do it," Mateo said, his voice steady. "But she walks away. Now." Vic smirked. "Deal. But she stays close. Insurance." They led us into the warehouse, a cavern scene of damp concrete and flickering fluorescence. My heart raced, but I kept my face neutral, refusing to show fear. Mateo's hand brushed mine, a silent reassurance. Vic and his crew were planning the queen and break-in, and Mateo was supposed to be their lookout. I listened, memorizing every detail, my designers eye-catching the layout of the place. When they stepped away to finalize plans, Mateo pulled me aside. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "If this goes south, then we face it together." I cut him off. "I'm not leaving you." His eyes softened, and for a moment, it was just us in that grimy warehouse. He kissed my forehead, quick and fierce. "You're incredible," he murmured. Before I could respond, Vic called Mateo over. I stayed near the wall, watching, my mind racing. I wasn't a fighter, but I was good at thinking on my feet. I noticed a stack of crates nearby, some labeled with chemical warnings. An idea sparked. As Mateo talked with the crew, I slipped behind the crates, texting Aisha. "Warehouse on 12th and Mercer. Trouble. Bring help." I didn't know if she'd get it in time, but I had to try. The plan moved fast. Vic handed Mateo a bag of tools, explaining the target, a tech mogul's mansion with a safe full of cash. Mateo nodded, his face unreadable. I knew he was playing along, buying time, but my chest ached with fear. What if he couldn't get out? Vic turned to me. "You're coming too. Keep him in line." I nodded, my mind working. As we left the warehouse, I whispered to Mateo, "Those crates, chemicals, we could use them." His eyes widened. "You're crazy," he said, but there was pride in his voice. We piled into Vic's van, the air thick with tension. I sat close to Mateo, our hands intertwined. Whatever happened next, we were in it together. The van rumbled through Seattle's dark streets, the city lights blurring past. Mateo's hand was warm in mine, but his jaw was tight, his eyes scanning the road. Vic drove, his two goons in the back with us, their silence more menacing than words. I kept my breathing steady, my mind on the crates I'd seen. If we could get to them, we might have a chance. We stopped in Queen Anne, a neighborhood of sprawling mansions and manicured lawns. The target house was a modern fortress, glass walls, security cameras, the works. Vic outlined the plan. Mateo would disable the alarm, they'd crack the safe, and I'd stay in the van as collateral. My stomach churned, but I nodded, playing along. As Vic and his crew prepped, I leaned into Mateo. "The chemicals," I whispered. "Distraction?" He squeezed my hand. "Risky, but it could work." We slipped out of the van, trailing the others. Vic was focused on the house, his goons carrying tools. Mateo led me to the side, near a shed. "Stay low," he whispered, prying open the shed door. Inside were gardening supplies and a canister of fertilizer. My heart raced. Mixed right, it could make a smoke bomb, not lethal but enough to cause chaos. "You sure about this?" Mateo asked, his voice low. "No," I admitted, "but I'm sure about you." His eyes softened, and he kissed me, quick and desperate. "Let's do this." We worked fast, mixing the fertilizer with some sugar from a nearby bag, following a half-remembered chemistry trick from high school. Mateo rigged a crude fuse with a lighter and some twine. "This'll make a lot of smoke," he said. "Enough to spook them." We set the canister near the house, lit the fuse, and ran for cover. The explosion was small but loud, sending thick, acrid smoke billowing into the night. Vic and his crew shouted, scrambling back to the van. Mateo grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the street. "Go," he urged, but I heard tires screeching. Aisha's car. She'd gotten my text. She slammed to a stop, and we dove in, speeding off as Vic's van roared after us. Aisha's friend, a burly guy named Ty, was in the passenger seat, holding a bat. "You okay?" Aisha asked, glancing back. "Yeah," I panted. "Thanks." Mateo's hand found mine again. "You're a genius," he said, breathless. "Don't thank me yet," I said, watching the rearview mirror. Vic was gaining. Aisha floored it, weaving through the city. Ty called a friend, a former cop, who promised to tip off the police about Vic's crew. We ditched the car in an alley and split up, Mateo and I heading for my apartment. My heart pounded, but I felt alive, tethered to Mateo's steady presence. Back home, we collapsed on my couch, adrenaline fading. "You could have died," Mateo said, pulling me close. "So could you," I replied, my voice breaking. "Why didn't you run when you had the chance?" He cupped my face. "Because you're my home, Jada. I'm done running." Tears stung my eyes. I kissed him, pouring everything into it. Fear, love, hope. We stayed like that until dawn, wrapped in each other, the world outside fading away. The next day, Aisha called with news. Vic and his crew had been arrested, caught with stolen goods from another job. Mateo was in the clear for now, but we both knew his past wasn't fully behind him. "We need to talk," I said, sitting him down. "No more secrets." He nodded, taking my hands. "I was a thief, Jada. Small stuff mostly to survive. But I'm done with that life. You make me want to be more." "Then be more," I said, my voice firm but soft. "With me." He smiled, his eyes bright. "Deal." Over the next few weeks, Mateo and I rebuilt. He moved in, his sketches filling my apartment with color. I landed a freelance design gig, and he started working at a community art center, teaching kids to draw. We were cautious, always looking over our shoulders, but the fear faded with each shared morning, each quiet night. One evening, we sat by the Puget Sound, the water shimmering under the stars. Mateo took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin. "You know what you stole from me?" he asked. I raised an eyebrow. "What?" "My excuses," he said, grinning. "I used to think I didn't deserve this love, a real life. You proved me wrong." My heart swelled. "You stole something from me too," I said. "My walls. I didn't think I could trust anyone again." He kissed me, slow and deep, the world falling away. "We're even then," he murmured. We weren't perfect. Our past still haunted us. My family's rejection, his old debts. But together we were stronger. Mateo wasn't just a thief who'd snuck into my kitchen. He was the man who'd stolen my heart and given me his in return. As we walked home, hand in hand, I realized what he'd really taken. My fear of being seen, and what he'd given me was worth more than anything. A love that felt like home. We faced challenges, of course. My identity as a trans woman drew stares, whispers, sometimes worse. Mateo's past made trust a delicate dance. But we faced it all together, building a life rooted in honesty and courage. The city that once felt cold now sparkled with possibility, because we had each other. One night, as we lay in bed, Mateo traced the lines of my face. "You're my everything," he whispered. "And you're mine," I replied, my voice steady with truth. The thief who'd snuck into my kitchen hadn't taken my things. He'd taken my heart, my trust, my hope, and in their place, he'd left something better. A future we'd fight for, together.